Have you ever wanted to make socks or mittens or a hat, but immediately the pattern calls for double pointed needles and you're like, how do I do that? Well, it's as simple as this. Most patterns call for at least 4 double pointed needles. A couple tricks are as follows. Cast on the number of stitches onto one needle. So use your preferred method. I like to do the long tail because it's nice and stretchy. Once you have all the stitches onto your needle, you're ready to separate or divide your stitches. Now, don't worry if you can't get all of your stitches. Just try to get as many as you can on there. Then what you're going to do make sure you've got your working yarn and not your tail. You're going to take your second needle and go into the first stitch purlwise. And then you're going to slowly divide your stitches. And you're going to take them one by one. And usually, say for a mitten or a sock, you have to use 3 needles. So divide your number of stitches by 3. Once you've got stitches on your second needle, take your third needle and continue on. You can just let that one rest and continue to put these stitches onto your third needle. When you have your stitches divided onto your 3 needles, make sure that the cast on edge is turned on to the inside. That way you can prevent any twisting within those stitches. Otherwise you'll create a Mobius and it will create an interesting project. Then what you'll want to do is pick up your first and your third needle, and you're going into your first stitch. So just kind of scoot that to your end of your needle. And you're going to go into the first stitch as if you're going to knit. This part's going to seem very awkward at first until you get the base established. But then you're going to take, make sure you've got your working yarn and not your tail. And you're going to knit that first stitch. And just come through the loop and off. Now make sure that the needle, your third needle, is actually underneath the needle that you're working on. Then it stays out of the way. And you can just knit those stitches right off of your first needle. Once you've kind of knit the first couple of stitches, you can drop the other needles and they just kind of dangle there. When you do socks or mittens, the pattern always calls for a ribbing. When you're knitting, you're going to knit 2 and you'll purl 2. If you have an odd number of stitches, make sure on your needles you end with a purl stitch. It's much easier to start your next needle when you have a knit stitch to start with than a purl stitch. Then you can just carry on doing your ribbing. If you have to shuffle your stitches, it's just a matter of shuffling them from one to the other if you need to rearrange the amount of stitches on your needle in order to end with a purl stitch. It's a little bit quirky at first, but once you get going, it's pretty straightforward. Have fun doing your ribbing, have fun doing your socks and knitting. Hopefully that was helpful. If you still are not having too much fun with your DPNs, stay tuned and we will be doing a little video on magic loop next week. Have fun knitting.